Welcome everyone. Today we have another episode and we will discuss about logistic challenges and especially about the supply chains, innovation and this kind of things. We have our special guest today, Madam Durga Das, and everybody I think know from World Talent Economy Forums about her initiative, especially on water related projects. And beside that, we have our professor from USA, from Transhumanist Party, Mr. David Schumacher. So I want to start from Madam Durga. Uh, how are you today and how you introduce the problem of supply chain?
Where can I begin? Um, First of all, thank you, Sharif, for bringing me back on your show. As always, you keep bringing up topics that are sometimes, I think, beyond my scope of excellence, but I will try my best to address the point you raised. Um, I think supply chain itself, and considering especially from the business I come from and the products we manufacture, about machines that make water from air, we've had issues, especially now post COVID or during COVID. I wouldn't even say post COVID, we're still getting through it, because lot of our components come from China. Internally, even in India, the components we get from India, our vendors have had several issues. And so understanding how to deal with that whole chain, to put together the business that we have to put our machines, has been kind of a challenge beyond imagination. But we have had to find ways and means to survive and find unique ways on how we can circumvent the situation and to stay alive to get past this situation. So I think supply chain is critical. I mean, it's not just in business, right? It's even in life. We have a whole process of how we, when we wake up, we eat, we breathe, we live, we eat food, the food that comes to our table from farm, whatever way we look at it, our entire life is based on supply chain. It's not entirely only about business, but particularly in our business, we've had issues, and we had looked at many ways of how to manage it. And I think during the course of this conversation, I'll share with you a few ideas on what we did and how we are managing. I'm not saying we've overcome it, but we have certainly tried to live within the scope of those issues that we have faced. And hopefully that'll help others also understand how they can work with their businesses to kind of stay alive and stay with the program till we can all get out of the situation.
Mhm. Thank you, madam. Thank you for joining today. Beside that, I have a questions to both of you. Like we are observing from Bill and Melinda Gates foundations, Bill Gates trying to solve these vaccine issues. Okay, like especially in the COVID-19 periods. Beside that, he is trying to solving the climate change issues with energy and many more things. So like like what always we discuss about that professionals and the excellence or a professional of specific topic, like Mr. Bill Gates, he is actually like I just want to know, like he's come from this uh, like biotech industries or healthcare industry or this climate change industry, or entrepreneur always like to be open minded, they have to solve the problem of the ecosystem. Because many entrepreneurs from Asia Pacific, they always ask us that how they can develop their expertise to solve the problem. Mr. David Schumacher.
Yes, hi, Dan. Good morning. And good morning to our illustrious other guest. Good to see all of these faces here this morning. Yes, I really like a question about Bill Gates. I think in one standpoint, I think he is compelled by his nature to solve problems. I mean, he obviously is one of the founders of Microsoft, which everybody knows. I'm using a Microsoft-based computer this morning. But that all came out of the result, the entrepreneurial drive to be able to, not be able to, but to be compelled to solve problems. And he did that for many years at the head of, a very huge, successful, now international corporation. How do you retire from that? Okay, I'm of retirement age myself too. And while I have retirement benefits, while I have investments that I made when I was uh, uh, more directly, I guess you might say, in the workforce because I had no other option. But when it came time to retire, I don't want to say that I'm just like Bill Gates, but I can understand the idea that I couldn't quit doing things. So I continued to do things. And that's why I do the things post retirement age. And I think Bill Gates is the same way. Now, he, of course, is doing them on a much, much grander scale, for which I applaud him. And I'm happy to see that we have people in this world with those kind of skills that are willing to tackle big issues, take on big critics sometimes, put vast amounts of his own money into, of which he has because of his past successes. And as they say in the financial world, the past is no guarantee of the future. Nevertheless, he does have a good reputation to continue to build on and to solve these problems. So happy that you brought his name up this morning. I'm happy to see him engaged, and I'm happy to see that perhaps we'll be better prepared for whatever comes in the future. One of my big passions, the future, because of people like that.
Mhm. Thank you, thank you. We have our expert from the supply chain industry, Mr. Wolfgang. He has expertise to work for World Economic Forum. Sir, how do you want to introduce this problem? And we are just start discuss on this supply chain innovation. Madam Durga from India, Professor David Schumacher from USA.
He's on mute, I think. Sharif.
And Mr. Wolfgang, I think you live in. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here and speak about supply chain innovation. It is something I believe the world is waiting for. So we have a reputation which needs some lifting as supply chain professionals. But we have also to take into account that we are one of the oldest industries in the world. So we have all that heritage and baggage to carry. And some parts of the industry did better than others. If we look at the aviation industry and how they managed to get some of the digital initiatives and innovations rolled out globally. That's an example, was very much driven by regulation. The shipping industry had a bit of a harder time to get it to, let's say, a certain level of innovation. We still talk about the container as the biggest innovation of all time in shipping. So that should also give us a bit of, yes, pride, but also concern. But I see there initiatives like now a new discipline which has been created, like maritime informatics.
Hello. Hello.
I think he's frozen, Sharif.
Yes, no problem. If you want to continue on this point, especially supply chains in your industry, so you can, yeah.
Sharif, I want to quickly, I'm here with somebody that I thought would be valuable to the show, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm,
introduce him to you, right?
mm-hmm,
His name is Yatish, and he is half French, half Indian,
mm-hmm,
and he has a company called Calypso Global, and he's
mm-hmm,
been in the industry of garment sourcing for the last,
mm-hmm,
I think, over 25, 32 years. And I think
mm-hmm,
the subject of supply chain because he deals not just with India, but with Bangladesh, with Europe, with America, would add a lot of value. So, with your
Mhm.
permission, and I know it's a little bit
Yes.
of a surprise, but with your permission, I'd like to introduce Yatish.
Yes. Hello.
Hi, Sharif.
Yes. Nice to meet you. Yes.
Hi, David. Hi, Wolfgang.
Hello.
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
pleasure to meet you all.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
I come from the world of sourcing, and basically, we have various clients in Europe and the US for whom we source apparel, home furnishings, all kinds of gift articles, leather, maroquinery, etc. So, of course, shipping all these products from India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, China to our eventual end clients. And just to let you know, yes, I think it's not just the breakdown of the supply chain, it's also partly a lot of geopolitics which plays a very major role. For
Mhm.
example, a small example, India suddenly decided that Chinese containers were no longer very interesting and that India
Mhm.
should start manufacturing its own containers.
Mhm.
That slowdown of Chinese containers coming into India hit our industry very badly. And what we used to ship within 5 days of handing over at a port ended up going in 15 to 20 to 25 days. So these are all delays which eventually hit the complete sourcing chain all over globally. So it's one thing. COVID is one thing, of course. Lockdowns hurt everybody badly. But after that, geopolitics seems to be playing a role too.
Yeah, I can only support that. I can only support that because I believe that supply chain and I say that all the time are doing quite well, considering what we are doing to them. Right?
Yes.
We are changing, as you said, we are changing the rules. We are closing critical infrastructure. We're making it really hard. We are closing shops. We're creating massive imbalances, which eat up warehouse capacity. All that. I think you have a very valid point, and maybe that's one area of innovation which hasn't been discussed that much, which is in fact global policy innovation around supply chains. If
Mhm.
we were able to harmonize the way we govern supply chain on an international level and put in some kind of restrictions of what countries can do, and I know that I'm asking for a lot here, it would go much easier. An example is the European Union, but you saw also in the European Union when let's say, the more or less guidance came out to keep borders open for the flow of goods. Even in the European Union, some countries decided to do the opposite, right? And then we're wondering why we had 100 kilometers of traffic jams in front of the borders, and the shops were running out of goods. So, but I think that's definitely a field where we should focus more on what is needed to keep goods globally moving.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Yes. International agreements would go a long way in solving these problems.
Yeah, we have created the WTO to do that for us, but I think the WTO is currently a bit, if you talk about geopolitics, a bit also in a difficult situation. But I hope that we will unblock that and get to a more workable mode.
Right. I'll pass you back to Durga.
No, Sharif, it's all yours. Sharif, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Ah, cool. Yeah.
Yes. I have. Okay. Okay. I have my friend Mr. Alex. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Thank. Good
everyone.
morning. Good morning. I know you are a climate activist. So, what type of challenges you have as a climate activist in your supply chains and this kind of things, and especially I think you work in California, not only California, you have engagement with around the world. So when any kind of disaster come and problem comes, you try to solve many problem in different countries. So how it works? We have expert Mr. Wolfgang, maybe he can
Okay.
give you some solutions. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. So I have been on some of these shows and covering it from a disaster relief. So I own an international disaster relief company. I've gone to many areas before the major aid organizations, governmental or non-governmental aid organizations, delivering supplies and aid. I've been through, I think, 7 hurricanes. I've covered the aftermath of 5 hurricanes. I've covered forest fires. I went to Iraq by myself a few years ago. And I have noticed a lot of course, I've noticed a lot of issues with the supply chains. And I've noticed the more resilient people are and how they're able to adapt, they're able to get past the disaster. One of the best supply chains that I've ever seen how people adapted very well was in the Himalayan foothills of Nepal. Even though there was an earthquake and it disrupted their supply chain with their roads, they still were able to get supplies into the most affected regions just by communication and person-to-person communication in areas where there's no cellular connectivity, where there's no internet, and there's no roads. So that was really interesting to see how their supply chains work and how they were more resilient. So as we're talking about climate change, we are going to continue to see more climate-related disasters and our supply chains affected by climate change. Just some examples. I mean, whenever there's a major storm, not only are we going to see downed power lines, which cause localized or regional electrical outages, which then affects the internet and the supply chain regarding to that. But storms also cause roads to wash out, flooded roads, trees in the roads and all of that. So it actually literally interferes with the supply chain of getting goods to certain areas. I have seen governments come through with helicopters to get aid into specific areas. I was actually in the Philippines after Superstorm Haiyan, and I had the chance to go on to some of the food distribution runs with not only the Philippine military, where we were taking aircraft into different areas, Chinook helicopters. I also was on an Osprey helicopter that had the ability, just like a Chinook, to carry large volumes of supplies into remote regions. So that's a more extreme method of getting supplies into regions where we're using, military and aircraft. But I think that we do need to focus. It's like insurance. We need to focus some of our attention towards alternative methods of transporting supplies in different areas, because we are going to continue to see more superstorms affecting regional areas. We're also going to see food shortages in regional areas, such as, so we have this huge storm right here in the United States that's brought a huge portion of the United States to extremely low temperatures. So I think we're going to see a lot of food shortages in the central portion of the United States in association with this, and we are going to it's going to cause disruptions in the food chain and the food supply. So I'll go ahead and listen to the conversation. I'll write down some more notes and hopefully contribute some.
Thank you,
good
Mr.
input.
Wolfgang, because Mr. Wolfgang, climate change is a big issue, and I saw that you have different kind of research. Most importantly, you are in very important position of World Economy Forum, especially the supply chain issue in the COVID-19 periods. Many developing countries has a lot of challenges, especially on supply chain issues. In Malaysia, we are observing, from Indonesia, from Bangladesh, India. We have our guest from India. They are discussing on that particular point. So how we can develop our capacities in the supply chains and this industry?
When it comes to climate change, we are talking about carbon emissions, a reduction of carbon emissions. And it's a complex topic. I think that this is one of the biggest challenges the supply chain has. So if you take it mode by mode, first there is starting with last mile or first mile. Take urban transportation, we will see a shift towards much more electric powered vehicles, bicycle couriers. We see that today, and the technology is largely there. It becomes a bit more difficult in the middle mile, which is the suburbs, etc. But truck manufacturers are also coming up with cleaner vehicles. And then there is the long haul. Long haul is problematic, whether it's rail, you have diesel powered trains, so you need to electrify. If you have electrified cargo transportation, it's very often a capacity issue, infrastructure limitations, etc. We have also a challenge with the rivers. If we come to climate change, river shipping is from an ecological point of view better than road. But because of the rising temperatures, we have less and less water in the rivers. So we need to move, in fact, cargo from the rivers to the rail better and to the road. There are also new technologies like Hyperloops. Hyperloop is a technology that that has the ability to be carbon neutral in the operation. We nevertheless have to see this as a holistic concept. We have a lot of steel, aluminium, or at least aluminium. We have cement, so we have to clean this up and find ways to work on the entire solution and all components to it. If you spoke about the World Economic Forum, the World Economic Forum has an initiative that covers the transport, the aluminium, the energy generation, and the concrete, so the cement part. But I think Hyperloop is definitely something to look into. I work with Hyperloop, full disclosure. Then you have the aviation industry. The aviation industry is seen very often as also highly problematic because some people said, and it's a very often repeated quote, that the last drop of oil will probably go in an airplane. But also airplanes can be powered in a cleaner way. We can use biofuels or jet fuels. This is already practice. It's not 100% biojet fuel. You don't need to change the engine, so it's a pretty good concept. You enter into issues with your competition with food supply. You are having biodiversity challenges, but there are ways to even clean this mode. Then you have ocean shipping. Ocean shipping needs also alternative fuels. If you take the feeders can be probably powered by hybrids with electric, etc. But if you go to container ships, you need alternative fuels. So in a nutshell, it's a big challenge, but there is a solution for each mode. And we have to focus on it. And there are commitments, whether it is ICAO commitment of decarbonization up to 2050, whether it's the IMO 2030, 2050. So there are initiatives on the way. And I have not even spoken about hydrogen and other solutions which may be useful down the road.
Wolfgang, thank you so much for introducing that concept. I come from a futurist mindset, and I love your idea of taking these emerging technologies, if you will, and being able to apply them to the problem. I think when it comes to many of the solutions, especially like climate change and how that affects our distribution systems, we've got to do this as a two-part prong approach. We've got to go about trying to solve the base of the problem the best we can.
Right.
Carbon obviously is a big issue there, but then also we need to apply new technology in ways that maybe haven't been applied before to be able to adapt. So cure on one hand, adapt on the other hand, like you were talking about hydrogen, for example, or biofuel. Biofuel I see as a stepping stone into maybe better propulsion systems. I am a big fan of electric, and we're starting to see electric in vehicles now. We're starting to see Elon Musk has a huge transportation truck, a delivery truck, an 18-wheeler that's electrically powered and can be self-driving as well. So now you can have a truck that's doesn't have the maintenance schedules that you have when you're burning petroleum and can essentially operate 24 hours a day. Here in this country, one of our major retailers is already using such vehicles for long-haul transportation on the road. So it's not just future from 50 years from now, it's emerging as we see these things go forward. So I think this approach of mitigating, curing, reversing on one hand, and then the challenge of adapting with the technology we have on the other hand is clearly the right direction. I see many new technologies that can help that, not just electric or driverless trucks, but say drone delivery for that last mile, if you will. Here during the pandemic, I've got used to ordering groceries online and having them delivered. And I expect to see a drone dropping them on my doorstep in the not too distant future. And then to Alex's comment about serving areas in needs of disaster, that's another area that drones we will see that are applied to. So I think I'm pounding on this issue of let's try to solve the base problem, and then let's try to use the technologies that we have to adapt to the problem. The challenge with that, of course, is investment, heavy investment by supply chain distribution companies and the technologies that they have now, but hopefully in their distribution of assets cycle, as they're looking at retooling, remanufacturing, modernizing. This is something that will be introduced. If not, we're going to see companies that enter as disruptors in this space that will change things. And we've already seen that. I've already mentioned Elon Musk. He's one of the great disruptors, but he's not the only one out there. So I look at the problems and I stay optimistic about what we can do going into the future and how we creative humans will handle this. So yeah, thanks for introducing that subject.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Durga Das and Yatish. Yes. So can you add your point? Can you unmute yourself? Madam Durga Das. Madam, can you unmute yourself?
So sorry. I'll start again. I'm going to get back to where I started with about our business, right? We had a problem with getting components to manufacture our own products, which we needed to get to customers to stay alive. So the one way we looked at it was, what else can we do? Right. And since we were in the solution of providing drinking water to people, making water from atmospheric air, we looked at opportunities where there was already wasted water and then said, what can we do about that? So in a manner of speaking, we looked at the issue of supply chain, which was becoming a problem because of COVID, and said, can we reinvent or can we add something else to our our offerings or to our services or solutions that can be handled within the situation that we live in. And so we looked at where there is also already wasted water. We created a patented solution that took wasted RO water and gave back potable drinking water. So one way to stay alive in business was not about saying, oh, whoops, I can't get the products and the components to deliver my product to customers, but how I can live within the environment that I'm living in and kind of create opportunities that can help me survive and get past this. That was one thing we did. The second thing that kind of occurred to me as you were all suggesting these ideas of Hyperloop, and I met, a gentleman from Italy who came here to India a couple of years ago, um, reinventing the Hyperloop. Even though Elon Musk started with it, he actually also tried to do it from Italy. We have a solution. I was talking to somebody who had a solution that's been now promoted by the Indian government that takes drinking water from, let's say, RO plants or treatment plants to communities that have no water through electric vehicles. And this was called an effective solution, and it was called Water on Wheels, or WOW for short. But it was only a distribution solution. It really didn't, it wasn't exactly something that created the wow factor in my mind. When I told him, why don't I put a machine on your electric vehicle that makes water while it's moving? You don't need to go collect water from point A and take it to point B and through an electric vehicle. Wherever it is, it's going to be making water as it moves. And that to me is a double wow factor. So can we create something that takes solution to the customer, right? As close to the customer as possible, so we don't have the problem of supply chain to begin with. We don't have the problem of creating it in one place, transporting it to another. If we can produce it as close to the customer as possible. So for me, this was another way of us as a company thinking creatively on how we can, deal with the current situation that we all find ourselves in. So these are a couple of points that I just wanted to kind of throw on the table there.
Thank you, Mr. Wolfgang. I think yes.
I know. I have an idea when it comes to COVID-19, and I would like to test that idea. And it came to me yesterday, in fact, because we all get deliveries, right? We all get deliveries. There is a lot of moving workforce. And I said, if I take a supply chain perspective, I think all moving workforce should be vaccinated first, because they are real carriers, right? So they are delivering 100 parcels per day. So how much risk are we taking? Just as an idea, I don't know. I didn't look into this, but I didn't hear about that. We talk about people who are 70 or 80, and definitely they need to be protected. But we also need to think about what are the highest risk factors and deal with that. Just when we speak about current challenges in supply chain, this is even current challenges in society potentially created by supply chain.
Mr. Yatish, I have specific questions to you. I want to know more what the present conditions in India. Even we know that many countries has dependency on Serum Institute. We are taking vaccine from India. What the supply chain real scenario in India, especially how actually Serum Institute working with other countries in South Asia as well as the Europe and America. What the real situation right now?
Well, Sharif, as we all know, during COVID-19, when India went into lockdown from March to May, everything came to a standstill. At that point of time, it took nearly 2 to 3 months for the supply chain to start reviving itself slowly and steadily. Now, today, I would say that the supply chain in India is improving, and it is actually able to deliver within India and internationally. Now, when it comes to the Serum Institute particularly, there is still a lot of government control on the vaccine because the government decides where and who will be vaccinated first. So obviously they started with the health workers and now they have made their categories and they are accordingly moving forward category by category. In India, for example, over 4 million, nearly 5 million vaccines have already been administered. And our neighbors have also been given some dosage of the vaccines uh, for them, especially countries like Bangladesh,
Mhm.
uh, because they don't have their own production.
Mhm.
Apart from that, I think whichever route you look at, whether it's air or sea, uh, everything is diminished. I do not think we are able to move goods at more than 50 to 60% of its original capacity before COVID as on date.
Yeah. Okay, okay. One specific point I just want to introduce, and we want to know more solutions. Example, you are talking about Bangladesh. Bangladesh cannot produce vaccine. Even example, Malaysia do not produce in vaccine. But issue is that when, example, Serum Institute recruit agent in Bangladesh for vaccine distribution, they give only the authority of this Beximco, Salman F. Rahman company. He is also a chief advisor of our prime ministers. But fact is that, like, when the vaccine come and vaccine issue comes and different institutions choose only one organization, and this one organization has opportunities, or they can do monopoly business in a specific country. Example, Bangladesh. It's a big issue. Even in media, it's come that Beximco only can do monopoly on vaccine distributions. So in that situation, Mr. Wolfgang or the expert, those you can share that vaccine distribution or supply chain issue, it's now more political, or we can do it for betterment of our people. I don't know, like in between India and Bangladesh, it's really political issue. It's not like, it's a more like political. So what do you think, how we can, like, go for a real solution?
Well, first, it comes back to what we discussed before: a global approach to an more inclusive world, and a world that functions better. In terms of numbers, you can say that 80% of the vaccines go into the developed countries. So that's where the problem starts. And it was, in fact, the UN, the WHO, that reserved a significant amount of vaccine to distribute it in the developing world. So that's the first thing. So it is extremely political, and it's political between countries and within countries. I hardly have seen an opposition applauding the governing party for their successful distribution of vaccines. So it's a highly emotional topic. If you look, and I will keep it short, if you look at the challenges, the first challenge is we don't have enough production capacity, so we have to ramp this up. It's a new product. It has its own complexities. If you do look at just the glass which you need, you have 3 to 4 glass manufacturers in the world that produce this glass, so they have to ramp up. And now you can think about the ingredients. You have very complex networks to be ramped up. What is relatively smooth is the entire transport part, because the transport industry is very used to deal with peaks. And second, we are not talking about tons. We are talking of very tiny packages. Okay, they come in volume, but they also come in batches out of the supply chain. So there is no issue. The issue then starts in the distribution and getting the vaccine into the arms of the people. where you need to activate and build the infrastructure of the entire health system. So, and if you don't, and the health system, we know that the healthcare system is not equipped for that. So then we come up with, okay, we create central vaccination hubs. And that is not only about vaccine, that's about everything, about tents, about desks, about chairs, about nurses. Then we need to think about how many people do we need to vaccinate people? All these hundreds of thousands of volunteers that all need to be trained. So, and I stop here. I do not even talk about transparency in the process and global digital platforms to run all this. But that shows you the challenge we are up against. The silver lining on the horizon is that organizations like UNICEF, in fact, are trained to distribute billions of vaccines every year. So we are not starting from zero, but we have never had a situation like that. And instead of, we have a lot of criticism and people who think it's not going well. I think it would be good to support what is done and build a movement of positive spirit and a positive messaging around the vaccine distribution. Criticism hardly helps in that situation.
Thank you, sir. Professor David
So agree
Schumacher.
with you, Wolfgang. So agree with you.
Thank you, Professor David Schumacher. You are also from a political party, transhumanist party, and advanced. You have advanced philosophies, and already you are also come up with the idea of FDA approval and many process. You are also from your political parties you are discussing. So how we can create better ecosystem? Yes, I do not want to criticize politically, but I want a sustainable ecosystem. At least in the COVID situations, we want to save more human lives.
Yeah, let me start off by saying that, telling you a little bit about what's going on here in the U.S. as far as the COVID response. So the United States, by its very name, is actually 50 different governments all operating together. So the governor of each one of our states is the executive in charge of the COVID response. So the COVID response is different here in Arizona, where I live, versus California, where I believe Alex is at, and Nevada, where I have other family, and then all down the eastern coast. Of course, the situation is different in each one of those countries, so it does make some sense to have the response decided perhaps at a lower level than nationally, but nationally does play into it as well. Back to your comment about political parties, yes, I'm an officer in a minor political party here, which promotes science, health, and technology and rational discourse, things that you don't necessarily find that floats to the top of your consciousness when you're thinking about political parties. So I want to say that, yes, COVID response, just like everything else, is clearly political, and I don't see that as a problem. I actually see that as part of the solution, because if the political process is working correctly, then the people that make laws, the people that carry out the laws, stay in their job because they're satisfying the needs of the people. So it's up to us and others to educate the people so that they can hopefully make wise choices at the ballot box. So if politics is not the problem, what is? And in my country, unfortunately, excessive partisanship is a huge issue. And sometimes the idea of partisanship and politics, the words get mixed together, but I like to separate them and say that partisan politics, especially very divided politics, is very toxic, and it's hard to move things forward. So that's one of the problems that we have here. You'll see that difference going state to state by which of our major political parties has a dominance in that government, and you'll see different types of responses based on that. I will give them good marks, though, all of them, for getting shots in arms and for the distribution system to get vaccine to the people, because it goes back to this political base that at the end of the day, they're going to have to run for re-election, and they're going to have to say, here's what the problem was, here's how we handled it. And certainly they'll try to frame it to make themselves look best. But the emotion of the people and how the people were served will go a long way towards deciding who stays in power during the next election cycle. On a national level, I'm fortunate here in America because we do have companies that are developing our own vaccines. And we've had a project under one president for rapidly developing that. And now we have projects from another president that I think are doing a better job as far as distribution and equitably deciding which states get vaccines. And as I said before, it's back down to the state level to decide from there. The criteria for a vaccine here is different than it is in other places. So I've already said that. Back to the national level, though, I think an area of concern is nationalism that becomes a me first kind of attitude. We'll develop vaccines but not share it with somebody else. Mm-hmm. Or we'll exclude vaccines from other countries. And I'm using America as an example, but clearly that's not the only place that exists. But that is a challenge to overcome. And perhaps, speaking from a political party, that's something to attack during the next election cycle and to educate between now and then and make democracy work for us in that particular place. So that's the political side of it. From the personal side of it, I'm very happy to see private enterprise being tasked to help be part of this solution. In my particular state, not only do we have some mega vaccine sites run by the government, but they have also tasked businesses that are good delivery points to be able to distribute the vaccines. For example, I got my vaccine at a local pharmacy, part of a large grocery chain that has pharmacies in the stores. This large grocery chain already has good experience with distribution, and the pharmacy already has good experience with handling, scheduling, and the expertise to put the shots in the arm. So it's a perfect storm the right way, being able to use private business in that way. And at the national level, private business has been used to repurpose industries by executive order of our president to build things such as PPE and to use their distribution systems for putting this out. So there's many, many moving parts in this. Politics can be a positive factor in this if we educate, and part of that education is trying to diminish the effects of the heavy partisanship and the me first attitude that can show up in nationalism. It's a big job, but it's one that we all must do.
And it's not a US only phenomena, right? As we
Yes. Yes, Madam Durgadas.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, like we are discussing about vaccine diplomacy and supply chain issues. What you want to add with Mr. Ovgan?
So I just have a few points. I think you're at your last few minutes of your show, but you're probably looking at closing statements. And so I know this discussion kind of went from supply chain and the future of supply chain and how it's impacted us today and what we're going to do into vaccine deployment somehow, right? Okay. And so while I do believe that's a very, very important discussion to have, and I do appreciate all the comments of how, whether it's geopolitics or whether it's how do you get the vaccine to somebody else. And it's just a very important point. I'm seriously still focused on small business. We need to survive. We need to be able to move on, right? I'm not sure if vaccine is going to help me if I don't survive, enough to get the vaccine. I need to be here and in business today and tomorrow. So I'm going to continue to stay on my topic or my point of view in terms of small business surviving, understanding the whole huge problem of supply chain that's affected us, and hopefully what we have learned through the process can help other small businesses. And I will leave the other experts to discuss, about how vaccine needs to get to people because they're more qualified than I am to probably discuss that. So my few closing statements on from a small business point of view in supply chain and COVID and post-COVID, what I need to do, what we need to do, and how I think I can help small businesses think differently is one, like I said, we were thinking creatively. We had products that needed components that came from China or elsewhere, Taiwan or Korea, and suddenly everything stopped. We could get nothing to us, right? And we had to figure out what are we going to do. So we started working on production of our product, which was components mostly brought in from within India, but not just within India because we have supply chain within India also has a problem because of COVID, right? So we have problem between states. So we started looking at manufacturers, vendors within our own community, within our own city that could bring us the best we could, which meant then we had to now rethink pricing. We had to rethink our product. Had to rethink our solution. While we still want to give water to people, drinking water to people from air, we still had to consider a new product line that brought in components from the vendors closest to us, where we just walk over and pick it up and bring it back to us, right? We could make products that would be effective and could be delivered to customers close to us and yet, be relevant. And so we started rethinking along those lines. We also started looking at solutions that could be kind of added components of the products that we were making. Like I said, not just water from air, but how do we treat wasted water? There were already plants that were making water and wasting water. So can we do something about that? So we started becoming creative about that, right? So from my point of view to other small business owners or small entrepreneurs out there who are listening to this conversation, we have to start thinking about how we can survive with the challenges that we're given in today's world, right? There will be solutions that will be brought about in the future. There will be political issues that will be sorted out. But as small businesses, we are not ingrained in the advocacy of political decisions, right? We are ingrained, we have to find solutions within our community, our problems, our customers, and what we make. And so from that point of view, my closing statement would be creative, find solutions within what you can do, get closer to your customer, get closer to your vendor, bring the two as close as possible, and then figure out pricing and product that is as close to your solution that makes you relevant, stay alive, and find a way into the future while the world figures out, governments figure out, policies figure out, advocacy figures out how we can go back and get those components or products or vendors that we need at the prices that we need. But I think this could enable us to become very independent, self-sufficient, and probably open doors that we didn't even imagine before, right? So that's what I would like to leave with your viewers, Sharif.
Thank you. I just want to add, because today's session I just share with uh, uh, Honorable Chief Advisor of Bangladesh, Prime Minister Salman F. Rahman. I want to invite him in our World Talent Economy Forum for vaccine distribution issues. So if today's speakers support me, I think he may join already. I invite him. I share today's sessions. He's very interested. He's observing to the shows. So hopefully
Yes,
we can invite him. He may joins. He may joins. Actually, he's observing today's shows. So because we want to make a transparent ecosystem, that is our objective, and that's why we are bringing from people from around the world, and we are making a disciplined ecosystem. And definitely we need advisors, those who can help us to develop our World Talent Economy Forums. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. First, Mr. Wolfgang, then Mr. Alex, then Professor David, and finally, Madam Durga Das.
Yatish, because I gave you my final. Yatish can give you his final remarks.
Yes, Professor. Mr. Wolfgang.
I think that a new balance is being struck. The decade of the 2000s was one for globalization. And what is happening now is some inclusiveness is also entering the complete economic scenario. And hence, supply chains are reinventing themselves to become more nimble and flexible and to deliver. I think the future will be much better for supply chains. At the same time, there is a lot of inclusiveness happening. Like Durga said, we are all looking closer to where we are to source, because this has been a big scare. COVID has been a big scare where all the supply chains have been broken. So I think there will be a better balance in the future. Local economies will thrive, as well as international economies will continue to exchange, because that is something which cannot stop. At the same time, as far as India is concerned, as a country, we still live on Jugaad, which is a very important word. And very simply put, it is the Indian way of innovating. So we find solutions wherever we find them, and we try and stay alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Wolfgang.
Yeah, as everybody knows, I'm very much a supporter of technology, but I leave that to David, I think, as the futurist. I keep it short and say that what saved us during COVID-19 and what makes a lot happen is the human factor. And that has been, again, brought back to our minds and top of minds, that it's about us all. And what I hope is that we get more collaboration, whether it's on the local level, the regional level, the global level, because if I think about the vaccine distribution, one thing I always underline is that the people in charge underestimated the challenge. And we need more collaboration and bring more people in at an earlier stage to maximize our chances. So my call for more human factor and more collaboration.
So agree with you.
Thank you, Durga.
Thank you. Mr. Alex.
Yes. So I earlier in the conversation, I loved how Wolfgang and David both talked about two main categories, and one of them was how to lower the overall carbon emissions or environmental impact of the supply chain, and then the other aspect was how it could become more resilient to climate-related disasters and disruptions in the future. So it's good to look at both of those aspects. So I don't like the mindset here in America where it's all about America first. It frustrates me because we are I guess a global superpower. We have a larger GDP, but so I think we have the responsibility to support and help developing countries around the world. And so even though I'm not about buy America first, I also support buying local and shopping local and all that. So if I support both things, I think it comes down to balance and when to choose that balance. So how you would choose that balance, I just quickly wrote down some categories. I would think one, you would like your supply chain to be reliable, because you need, whether it's shopping local or getting goods internationally, you want it reliable. For your company, of course, you're going to try to keep the cost the cost low. From an environmental perspective, you're going to want it to be efficient. And then in the last category, you're going to want it to be fast. So if you think about those 4 categories, and if you base your decisions off those 4 categories, you wouldn't choose, oh, just buy local or international. You would choose it what's best in those 4 categories. So if you're more environmental, you'd lean in that direction if you wanted reliability, and that would probably depend on not just your company, but what specific good you're buying, because some you might need to be 100% reliable. So anyways, those are some things to think about. So when we're thinking about supply chains, I was just thinking that not only is there the warehouses, with the raw materials and the storage, but we're thinking of a lot of modes of transportation. There's ships, there's trains, there's trucks, the big trucks with the 18-wheelers, the smaller trucks, UPS, Amazon, DHL. There's the carriers, which were mentioned here, which are not only just on bikes, but they're also by foot. And then there's the drones, the 2 types of drones, not just the flying ones, but now we're also starting to see the ones that drive. So we have all of these different modes of transportation which use different sources of energy. I never realized that until this conversation, that Hyperloop was another possibility of transporting goods. I knew that they transport people, and that's what they're designed for, but that's another aspect. So, and of course, we've been reliant on diesels and fossil fuels, but there are now hybrid ferries that I was on a few years ago when I was on Europe, in the Scandinavian region of Europe. They also had these really cool, it's like those wind things that spin on the ferries, which makes them more efficient. And we're going to start seeing those on cargo ships. And then hydrogen, of course, in the future. We're going to see more of that. So I do look forward to more alternatives instead of just being reliant on fossil fuels. So one last thing, when we're talking about supply chains, for anyone that's watching, the reason why there's supply chain disruptions is because there's categories that are affected. Now, one of those categories would be the tools and equipment necessary to transport the goods. Another category would be the communications that's communicating with all of those transporting. Logistics is another category. The energy that I just mentioned, whether it's hydrogen, fossil fuels, wind energy is another area. Having clear routes is another potential interference. If the road's affected, if the train tracks, then there's authorization when it comes to legalities, red tape, politics, all of those other aspects. And then there's the people aspect, having the manpower. So when you break it down into all those categories that I just mentioned, there's different options, like the routes, which one is the safest, which one is the fastest, which one is the most efficient. But when we transition towards automated vehicles and electric vehicles, we sometimes eliminate 3 of those categories, so it makes it more resilient for the company. So if you have electric vehicles that are self-driving, you're cutting out the communications because they're self-communicating. You're cutting out the people. It's becoming more reliable and more energy efficient, and maybe they might even bypass some of the authorizations necessary and some of the logistics. So when we transition towards electric and self-automated modes of transportation and shipping goods, I think that it's going to cut away some of these categories, so our supply chains are going to be more efficient. I just want to, give a shout out to how well I've seen the United Nations, USAID, the World Food Program, and other major governmental and non-governmental agencies and organizations around the world get supplies into very remote regions, helping people when there was no when the supply chains were completely disrupted in those areas. Some of these, like the World Food Program, I mean, they're just getting into areas around the world and really helping a lot of people. So I commend that. And again, we are going to see more climate-related disruptions. So please be prepared for climate-related disruptions of the future, so we can continue to get people clean water and food and the resources they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor David Schumacher.
Well, let me begin my closing remarks with a statement you probably wouldn't expect to hear from me, and that is politics is not the answer. However, politics is part of the long-term means to get to the answers that we want, the kind of answers that we want. So what is the answer? The answer is people. Everybody on this call, everybody that sees this, all our friends and neighbors, that's where the answers are at, whether they're in small business, large business, whether they're individual contributors in an organization. They come from all countries, they come from all people. There is no one place where all the good ideas come from. The good ideas come from everywhere, and they come from all different levels of the organization. So I am a self-described futurist and a self-described optimist, and I look forward to pushing results-driven innovation that's powered by science and technology. That's something that I can do personally. That's something that I can encourage those around me to do, and everybody that will listen to what I have to say. And I look to people that are much smarter than me for solving the individual problems that occur, say, in small business or in the very technical aspects of our topic today in supply chain. But I want to do all that I can to support that and to marshal support among all those that truly want, a better society as we go forward. So thanks for having me on for this really valuable topic, and I really enjoyed listening to people that really understand supply chain from their point of view, and I've taken copious notes here, and you have taught me a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor David. Thank you, Madam Durgadas. Thank you, Mr. Wolfgang and Alex. World Talent Economy Forums, we are still growing. We are working. We are doing hard work 7 days a week. And already we are targeting that we are distributing our 215th of episode to hundreds of millions people in Asia Pacific. And every time we are working with the government, corporations, education systems, we are trying to developing a strong ecosystems. And we are not always try to challenge the issues, we are trying to solve the problem. So like Madam Durga, she's solving water problem. David Schumacher come up with the technological idea. Wolfgang come up with the idea of supply chain. This is very much important. We have our climate activist, Mr. Alex, always support World Talent Economy Forum. We have 300 of speakers from 100 different countries. So this is the way we are trying to developing a better ecosystems and trying to solve the local problem with the collaborations of global people. Thank you everyone for joining today. And especially I want to give thanks our viewers, those who always support us and give positive energy. Thank you everyone.
One thing to say to you, Sharif. Like I keep saying, you just have this innate ability to bring the best of people from around the world to speak their mind on very, very important topics. So how you do it, I have no idea. When I grow up, I want to be just like you.
I second that.
I always
Sharif, well done. Keep going. Keep doing what you do. We love you.
Yes, thank you. Need all of your support. Thank you. And this June we are organizing a best conference with the collaboration of International Islamic University. So I want to invite you all in our conference. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yes.
Pleasure meeting all of you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.